You best not cut off my genius mid-stride, Brett.
All right, here we go. And 3, 2, 1. I disagree.
I disagree. You don't have the right to my opinion.
I'm just trying to save the world, man.
I don't know, maybe.
It's legit.
Can I finish?
Can't fit.
Hold on. Fine.
And now, disagree to disagree.
Welcome, everyone, to this week's episode of Disagree to Disagree. I am co-host Brett, along with my buddy Jason.
Yo.
Good to see you, bud.
As always.
This week's episode is brought to us by a new sponsor for this year, the Global Cabal, who reminds you they control all government and finance and the developers of Soylent Green.
Brett.
They exist.
And we want to remind you that you can find us on social media at the D2D podcast. The 2 is numerical. The D2D podcast. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all of the socials.
Don't forget, you can also find us at your favorite podcast distributor. We recommend Google Podcast, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. That is Disagree to Disagree with Jason Page and Brett Sowie.
And, rate it and share it and comment and like all of that stuff.
Please, we recommend it.
We like that. We like that. So what are we talking about today?
This week, we're going to revisit COVID and Corona, just do a little update of where we're at. The Biden administration, of course, is now in and running things. So they have plans in place that they'd like to do, and they're trying to get legislation passed. So it's probably good for us to take a breath and take a look at where we're at with COVID and Corona and the numbers. And then
I can't.
Oh, sorry.
No, you don't have to be sorry, Brett.
Trying to be all polite here after last week's episode.
I know we I don't think this is going to be nearly as contentious, but I was just going to say that when we first started talking about this, and I think this is the third time we've talked about it on the show now, we were amazed that we were about to pass the 200,000 dead threshold. And here we are just passing 400,000 dead a few months later. It just feels like, I don't know. Have you become numb to it? Has America become numb to it, do you think?
I think maybe a little bit. I think that's kind of human nature. I mean, even if you go back to the Spanish flu in the early 1900s, there was a little bit of this kind of thought. And granted, medicine knowledge has has dramatically increased since then. But there was sort of this, we're kind of over it. And back to business as usual after, not even a year, I think, according to his history books, even though it kind of lasted for longer than that. And I think because of how accelerated our society is today, especially with social media and the media cycles, 5, 6, 12 hours, maybe 24 at best if it's a hot story. So everybody kind of has a memory of a goldfish, essentially. And so, I think a little bit is people get fatigued pretty quickly with things.
But it's not just America. I mean, I looked, the world has now over 1 billion cases. What are there, 7 billion people in the world? 1 billion cases and over 2 million deaths. So right now, the United States, which accounts for about 4% of the world population, is accounting for about 20% of the total deaths from coronavirus.
Yeah, total cases in the United States, over 24 million. And California is sort of the biggest driver of that, California and Texas. I guess in a way it makes sense because they're the larger populated states, but it feels like these numbers kind of keep growing and growing and growing. And I kind of wonder how things are kind of tabulated, where the data comes from. I mean, how trustworthy is the data? What do you feel about that?
I am not as untrusting of our citizen scientists as you are. I know we had discussed earlier this year, the flu numbers, are some of those getting rolled over into being called COVID deaths. I'm sure there's some of that, but I also think that it amounts to nothing more than a statistical anomaly. I think that the people on the front lines and the people who are tabulating and keeping track of this are scientists and healthcare professionals and civil servants. I really do think they're doing their best to put the best information
on the whole
forward, in real time. Mm-hmm. I mean, but that's not to say that just like there's always some voting irregularity, but it doesn't really amount to the level of more than a statistical noise.
Yeah, I buy that, and I can kind of understand that and in some ways agree with it. What bothers me is when looking back at the historical way of how the CDC and physicians and pediatricians counted just the regular flu, and you said this earlier, they sort of all encompass respiratory illnesses and lump it into the flu, whereas now they're using that and the flu to kind of bundle in them with the COVID numbers. And some things that kind of make me weirded out by that is, it seems odd that you would do that. You would want specific illnesses, specific numbers for those specific things rather than doing an umbrella. But then there are cases that out of Washington State, Texas, Florida, California, just for an example of where in 3 of those states, Washington State, Florida, and Colorado, there were examples of people being killed by gunshots, motorcycle accidents, just for an example, where then those people died of those things. And then they do the autopsies, they have COVID. So they lump those deaths in COVID deaths. And then in Texas last year, they did an audit where the numbers dropped dramatically when they went back and they looked at the numbers and were like, well, holy cow, how is this happening? And then they contacted the CDC. Nothing else was said in the news after that news cycle when that story came out last year. So those things kind of make me question it a little bit. I don't see what the benefit would be. I mean, you don't need to really inflate the numbers. Just use the actual numbers. And I think that's just severe enough on its own.
It is. And I don't really think that anybody's trying to inflate the numbers. It is weird, the anecdotal things that you bring up about people dying in a car accident and then testing positive for COVID in postmortem and being labeled as a COVID death. But I got to believe, again, that is a very small, while interesting, statistically insignificant number.
I think it's very significant because it's still watering down the Kool-Aid to some effect. And there's incentive for those numbers to be the way they are. Hospitals and other health organizations get tens of thousands of dollars for each individual that not only tests positive for COVID, but then is hospitalized under COVID. And then there's incentive through the pharmaceutical companies because they want to sell vaccines and they make money off of those to then have those numbers inflated as well. So it starts to feel a little bit of a hand-in-hand kind of thing, and how the WHO, World Health Organization, and the CDC in the United States, Center for Disease Control, how they kind of use those numbers. And it almost feels a little bit of hand-in-hand with pharmaceutical companies. But a lot of the information you find online when you start to search for this stuff tends to feel like it falls in line of tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, as you would kind of say, because some of the major news outlets don't really cover it that much. And for me, I feel like that makes sense because where does the majority of advertising money for those mainstream news networks come from? Pharmaceutical companies. So I don't know. It's food for thought for me. It's an intellectual thought, sort of game theory a little bit in going about that, making sure you're looking at all those angles and all the possible influences. It's just really hard to try to prove it where nobody, regardless of political affiliation or thought, will be buying it as a whole.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to talk about, to think about. I don't agree with you that it's being done in any nefarious way and that it has any statistical significance on what is going on. I'm not quite sure what you mean about the pharmaceutical. I mean, the vaccine, to get herd immunity, we're going to have to get X amount of millions of people regardless. So that's just the vaccine game, I guess, which we'll get to later. I don't want to jump the gun on that.
Yeah.
But I'm more interested in like the real world ongoing impacts of COVID
itself.
Yeah.
How about this? Let me throw this right at you. About 17 mutations of COVID have occurred thus far. And according to The Sun, British news organization, January 15th, a couple weeks ago, the article is titled, "More Super COVID Mutant Strains Are Coming as Global Surge of Cases Let Virus Thrive, Scientists Warn." And that was January this month from The Sun.
Isn't The Sun like a tabloid though?
It's a news organization. I mean, they're just one news source. I don't know. I'm not a British person. I've always thought that
Sun. I feel like The Sun is a tabloidy kind of a thing.
Well,
but regardless, you're saying that there's
CNN. It's been all over the place. It's not just them. I'm just using them as a reference.
There's variations for sure. But again, that's to be expected. Viruses mutate. That's how we got this new strain, COVID-19, and it's mutating within. Hopefully, the vaccines have efficacy for the new strains. I think the preliminary data suggests that they do. But before we get to that, I'd like to just talk about the ongoing economic crisis in this country that has just held us in its grip for the last 10 months.
Yeah.
How long have we been at a standstill?
It feels more like a year at this point for me. I mean, like literally to the calendar, but
Well, it
maybe
feels
10
more
months.
it feels more like 8 years. But I read today, I was trying to find a proper statistic on small business shutdowns. And I read one that said 171,000 small businesses have closed either temporarily or permanently
Nationally?
and another one that quoted 317,000. So obviously over 100,000, probably hundreds of thousands of small businesses are really impacted by this. And small businesses are the engine, are the backbone of most local economies. So I really worry about making sure that those people make it through. I'm glad that we finally passed the $900 billion, the skinny bill. Remember when the $700 billion bailout in 2008 seemed beyond the pale? But this one was the second or third?
Third, I think. Yeah, third, I believe.
And now Biden wants a fourth.
Yeah.
That amounts to $1.9 billion.
It's something that Vice President Harris has said that really wants the legislation for everyone to start getting back to work and start passing these things so they can get moving on it. And Biden had said as much coming before the inauguration and now after, just trying to get everybody to start to work together and get this stuff passed. Something that I hope that they do. Not that I'm at the outset a huge supporter of them just yet. I'm still a little stinging from the election, a few months ago.
Yeah, but they're going to be better at the health, the health.
I hope so. I really do. I hope so. My thought is, this is just my thought real quickly on small businesses. I say open them. Keep them open. People don't have to go out.
Well, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Even when they're open, people aren't going.
Yeah, because I think there's still a lot of this stirring up fear of if you even step outside of your house, you're going to get it kind of thing. And I think if people just wear their masks, regardless if you agree with it or not, it's not that big a deal. Wear your mask, but just keep the businesses open. Don't lock them down. Make it available to people, and then people can choose for themselves. If you're vulnerable or elderly, yeah, you might want to figure out other ways and how to get groceries or other items or even just knickknacks you want to get from other small businesses.
Old people love their knickknacks.
Yeah, they do. They really do. And I think then healthy people take the necessary precautions, mask up and keep your distance until this
but
on a national aspect feels more under control.
There's just
keep
lot
the businesses open.
They are open, by and large.
Well, keep them.
But the problem, Brett, is that people aren't going to them. They have changed their buying habits and are doing things online because they just either for their own personal safety or because they're living with somebody who has a comorbidity or an elderly parent or whatever that they come frequently in contact with. I know a lot of my coworkers that have just, curtailed most of their social engagements, and they're probably just themselves healthy and fine. But this isn't, unfortunately, something that is just, it's not just you. We got to be in it for the team. And it's tough. It's terrible. I'm fatigued. I hate it. I wish it would go away. I feel like one of the greatest abdications of Trump's leadership is his complete lack of focus and empathy for the country.
Well, he's not president anymore, so we
runs.
don't.
No, but he ran out the clock being a whiny little bitch about an election that he lost. And during those months, things just became chronic. They're just so bad. And we could have launched the vaccines better.
But I can pair you with that. And that legislation was being withheld up going into the election, into the fall and into the winter that could have been passed before the election in November. And that was held up by House Speaker Pelosi. So
I don't know what legislation you're talking about. I'm talking about Trump being
didn't want to pass the
laser
bills
focused
to
on
get
himself,
money to people and get things going. So I don't want to keep going back and hear every time that Trump is still the heir of all of our woes. He's gone now.
I know.
So it doesn't benefit us, just like when we couldn't talk about Barack anymore. So
I'm just saying this is his legacy. And this is the reason he was voted out. And the fact that he just turned a blind eye to it his past couple of months, and the fact that Biden's making it its top priority. I mean, it couldn't be.
Yeah,
it's night and day.
COVID never would have happened. Trump would have been back in the presidency.
Oh yeah. That's for sure.
But
yeah.
I've said this before. Regardless of how you think Trump did or did not handle it well, It's a virus. It's going to do it at once, regardless of what anybody says, does, thinks, whatever. It's going to do whatever it's going to do, and it's proven. And with 17 now going on plus 17 mutations.
Yeah, but I mean,
so
we've
it's
got
going to keep doing what it's going to do.
There are
That's
tried and
Mother
true,
Nature.
there are tried and true public health measures, and we could have adopted them earlier, quicker. He could have been more of a model in that. But I will.
What are you looking forward to?
Okay,
so then let's switch it.
I will stop with the Trump.
Okay, so then what are you looking forward to what Biden is doing or going to be doing then?
Well, I think Biden has said not only the $1.9 trillion dollar package that he wants to get passed, that's going to be more direct stimulus to people, vaccination rollout money, small business money, local state money, because they're taxed to the nth degree. We're going to start losing firemen and policemen and teachers because local governments can't make their payroll.
When you say more direct payments, do you mean more dollar signs or
no? I mean
quicker access?
No, the direct payments, like in the past, we got the $1,200 check and then we got the $600
yeah, it was
check.
pretty instant.
Yep, and this round has a $1,400
Oh,
check.
so you mean more money?
Yeah,
when
that's
okay.
a direct payment to the
Just
American
wanted to clarify
people.
and understand
Yeah,
what you meant by that.
That is what I meant. So I'm looking forward to that. I'm looking forward to him marshaling the Defense Production Act and just making sure that whatever we need logistically to get done gets done. I think one of the problems is that, while there was great urgency in creating the vaccine, the rollout hasn't been federalized, I think, the way that it should have been to make it more, to just make it run smoother. All the states have been left to themselves. Some of them are coming up with these very complex, who gets the shot, who's eligible for the shot.
New York is the worst for that. Their
It's
questionnaire
really,
is horrid, I've heard.
Yeah, they need to simplify it. They need to just get it out the door as fast as possible. They do need to prioritize. I saw a statistic that 90% of people who die are 55 or older. So I would, just prioritize the people who are most vulnerable. And I just think that he will spearhead that. That'll be his number one thing that he tries to do for the first 100 days, year of his administration. And hopefully his renewed effort and leadership in that will get us through this. And the vaccines. And I mean, I don't know. Should we start talking about vaccines, or you got some more corona?
I guess just to close it, one thing I said before the election and something that I predicted is once Biden got voted into office, it was going to sort of be a clap, go away. And I think in large part right away, in terms of the initial outset, I'm initially wrong about that. We'll wait and see. But one thing I said was that all of a sudden the businesses were going to start opening back up. Governor Cuomo in New York sort of had a big old 180 turnaround a couple weeks ago in saying, well, now we got to reopen businesses now all of a sudden. And it's just sort of the shift to where people were crying for it before and there was resistance to it. And now that things are over with and settling down on the political landscape where there's no election cycle, and now these individuals are starting to clamor to have businesses open. And to party affiliation aside, political thought affiliation or whatever side of the spectrum you're on, I'm glad that's going to happen. In my opinion, I hope it will happen and continue to happen, and we don't fall back on some of those things.
Yeah, and I think that our economic health is tied to our actual
financial, economic health,
but our actual health
overall.
I mean, we need the vaccination in order for people to feel safe enough to go out and be the consumers that Americans are, that thing that drives our economy, that insatiable consumption, which is, we can get into that at a later date. But I don't think we get there until enough people feel safe mingling in bars and restaurants. And
well, let's get into that. Let's get into the next half of the episode here and let's talk about those things a little bit more.
So where do you want to start this conversation?
Let's just kind of make this a little bit of a smorgasbord, a little bit, like, looking
tapas style?
Yeah, just kind of pick your own.
All right.
I love tapas, by the way.
Who doesn't?
Yeah. But just kind of looking at vaccines. As far as vaccines, we're not health experts. So, we're just talking about our own personal opinions here and our thoughts on the subject. So don't follow our medical whatever information. Talk to your doctor and figure it out with them. With that said, so it seems to be that mRNA is kind of the big hot topic because it's such a new technology. It's never been used on humans
Yeah,
ever.
let's set this up and explain to people.
Sure,
The
go ahead.
The two vaccinations, they're the two vaccines that have been approved for emergency use thus far, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, utilize a new type of platform to deliver the vaccination. And it's the first time that this has been done on human scale,
Yes, humans.
mass human scale. I mean, it's been done in like the lab and things like that. The idea of the technology has been around for 20 some years,
Yeah.
but it's really just now with this, all the money and scientific brain power put into this past year, this Operation Warp Speed, getting these vaccines online, we now have this new technology that you were mentioning called mRNA, which is different from DNA vaccines in that
You mean traditional vaccines?
traditional vaccines.
Okay, yeah.
Am I wrong in calling
Well,
them
yeah, you
DNA?
said DNA. Yeah, I was really confused there. So the mRNA is different from traditional vaccines.
I thought a traditional vaccine was an.
Go ahead and finish your thought, but yeah.
I thought a traditional vaccine was a DNA vaccine, but like you said, we're not doctors.
we just play one on TV.
So, but my layman's understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I'll give up the floor to you here in a second, is that the main difference is that in a traditional vaccine, you're given a small amount of the actual virus to stimulate an immune response. And with this new mRNA technology, it does not have the virus. It essentially tricks your body into producing the protein that it thinks is the virus. Is that, am I right? Am I right?
A little bit, yeah. So you have the traditional, like you said, injects the actual virus or pathogen into the system, and then the mRNA actually goes down to a genetic level and starts working from there in terms of influencing the immune system. So let's get it from the words of the people themselves at Moderna. So if you allow me, I'm going to have them tell us on their website what this is all about.
This is Brett Sowie giving you the corporate straight talk. It's unbelievable to me. So you'd be the last person to read this as something that is we should take this at face value. But I agree, this is probably scientifically
this is
sound.
from the horse's mouth, and I may have to take a couple breaths if you want to interject here and there. I'll kind of remember where I'm at, but I'm just going to read this.
No, read it.
So this is what they call our operating system, recognizing the broad potential of mRNA science. We, Moderna, set out to create an mRNA technology platform that functions very much like an operating system on a computer. It is designed so that it can plug and play interchangeably with different programs. In our case, the program, that's in quotes, or app in quotes, is our mRNA drug, the unique mRNA sequence that codes for a protein. Okay? We have a dedicated team of several hundred scientists and engineers solely focused on advancing Moderna's platform technology. They are organized around key disciplines and work in an integrated fashion to advance knowledge surrounding mRNA science and solve for challenges that are unique to mRNA drug development. Some of these disciplines include mRNA biology, chemistry, formulation and delivery, bioinformatics, and protein engineering. And they continue here. Our mRNA vaccines, the software of life. When we have a concept for a new mRNA medicine and begin research, fundamental components are already in place. Generally, the only thing that changes from one potential mRNA medicine to another is the coding region, the actual genetic code that instructs ribosomes, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, to make protein. Utilizing these instruction sets give our investigational mRNA medicines a software-like quality. We also have the ability to combine different mRNA sequences encoding for different proteins in a single mRNA investigational medicine. We are leveraging the flexibility afforded by our platform and the fundamental role mRNA plays in protein synthesis to pursue mRNA medicines for a broad spectrum of diseases. Overcoming key challenges. Using mRNA to create medicines is a complex undertaking and requires overcoming novel scientific and technical challenges. We need to get the mRNA into the targeted tissue and cells while evading the immune system. If the immune system is triggered, the resultant response may limit protein production and thus limit the therapeutic benefit of mRNA medicines. We also need ribosomes to think the mRNA was produced naturally so they can accurately read the instructions to produce the right protein. And we need to ensure the cells express enough of the protein to have the desired therapeutic effort.
That was long.
It is. And I basically did the nuts and bolts, and I just kind of cut out the introductory at the top and then the last little paragraph at the bottom one because it's
Well,
but that's basically what they say.
Yeah, corporate boasting, and basically what my understanding of it is, and why they were able to. One of the reasons why they were able to build this so quickly is because they already had this platform essentially built for SARS and MERS, which were both coronaviruses. And like you said, it's a platform, and that platform can run different software, and they're saying, it's just essentially splicing whatever genes, and the platform is the delivery system. I mean, I'm no doctor, but that's my understanding of it. I will gladly take back my words if I'm incorrect. But that's so new technology.
Yeah,
new technology that got rushed out, and now
it's not tested very much, hardly at all.
And now we need to get the buy-in of 70 to 80% of our population in order, in Dr. Fauci's words, to reach herd immunity.
Yeah,
Do you think that that's a realistic goal given the amount of people that are vaccine hesitant for whatever reason?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of different thoughts about this because this is such a new technology. It has not been tested, and it's never been done for humans.
Well, I mean, this is basically it's gone through trials. That's the testing of it.
but not in any sort of relevancy or comparison factors of how these trials have typically gone. I mean, this was extremely, extremely rushed. And it's basically has been done mostly in animal studies. And it did not go well because older animals then ended up dying at higher rates, especially when they ended up getting the actual disease after their shots, or they were getting vaccinated again for the next dose system. So it did have impacts there. One of the things that I have an issue with this and why I think it may complicate being released to the public, as you were kind of saying, as Fauci was like, we got to get X amount of people, is this information is out there because now with the people that were undergoing these specific trials, what has been happening, and people can look this up, is that half of the people in the study took the vaccines. The other half did not. Placebo, let's just call it.
Yep, that's how a double-blind study works.
So now what happens is now that these medical boards are coming out, or even those that conducted the trials saying,
you're going to repeat that thing we heard on that long interview earlier today by those two fringy crackpots.
Knock it off. Stop it.
Well,
Stop it. We're just having a conversation. You don't need to dismiss me at every turn. Just please, let me have a moment. Just stop.
You've had plenty of moments.
So what happens is the concern is now is that they want to then test the other subjects in this trial and give them the vaccine. The one issue with that is that you're then not able to look at the long-term effects of those who took it and those who didn't, which has typically gone on for vaccine trials and when they're trying to research this thing. That's all I'm saying. It's not fringe. It's not crazy. It's a very logical way of looking at how they're going about these trials and representing them in the long term. It's up to people whether or not they want to take them. So as far as the rollout goes, I think you're going to have information that's going to influence people one way. You're going to have information that'll influence people another way. And then people make the decisions for themselves. It's up to them to make the medical decisions for themselves.
Are you going to take the vaccine?
I'm not planning on it this time. I don't take the flu vaccine, so I don't get the flu.
So you're not patriotic enough to take it to get to herd immunity. That's not your.
I don't look at it as a patriotic thing. There's things about the science that I question.
So do you think that restaurants and bars and sporting events are ever going to get back to where we want them to be?
Are you going to take the vaccine, Jason?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And that's fine.
Sign me up.
I'm not going to ridicule you for taking the vaccine no more than I need any sort of scientist to tell me, is it my patriotic American duty to take the vaccine? That's not fair.
I'm asking
That's
you.
not fair. Don't do that.
Stop filibustering me. Dear God, you've had your chance. Let me speak.
Still, it's not fair to do that.
I think it is fair to do that. I think it is a national priority, and we need to get past a certain threshold of people being vaccinated in order to eradicate this and get back to our regular, normal life. It's a civic thing to do. It's an amazing thing that we have the ability to do. We eradicated measles and polio and all of these terrible things when we first got vaccines about 100 years ago. And the vaccine hesitancy and the fucking don't tread on me American bullshit that is going to keep us from reaching the levels that we need to get our economy back up and running is going to be the fight of 2021. And I just, you can sit there and have as many theories as you want about the vaccine itself. I'm worried about the real world implications of its rollout and whether or not people will take it. And I feel like there is going to be at least 40% of Americans who don't want to take it, even though Trump wants to call it the Trump vaccine, and I feel like those are the people who aren't going to want to take it. I'm worried that our country won't come together over the need for that, and it is going to be politicized just like masks and all the other things. It's going to be a red-blue thing, and I really worry about that.
Well, I hope you didn't break your arm patting yourself on the back there. I find it reprehensible to call somebody unpatriotic when they're trying to make a decision for their own health and their own body. I'm not against vaccines. I think that there's something about the science behind them, but there are legitimate questions when it comes to that. As far as me having to justify whether or not I do or don't take the vaccine, I'll make that decision when the time comes. And I don't need to justify it to anybody. And it doesn't make me less of a patriot, no more than it makes somebody a patriot for doing it. I respect the fact that you're coming at it from an angle where, well, you got to do it because you got to help everybody else. Well, that's fine. But I also haven't taken the flu vaccine, and I've never really gotten the flu ever. I have family members who take the flu vaccine regularly, and they get the flu a week or two later, and it hits them hard. So with that being said, I don't like the idea of trying to make these things mandatory. I'm pro-choice when it comes to vaccines. I'm pro-choice for people's health decisions. When you start having the state make mandates of what you can do or not do to your body, that really becomes a big problem for me and opens a lot of doors to a lot of other areas. I respect the fact that you want to do that and you're going to be open to that. And I pray to God, as a Christian, I say this, that nothing happens and everything goes smoothly and there's never any side effects for you or anybody else. But right now, because this is new technology and humans tend to jump on things when technology and something new comes along, and there's repercussions from that. We never really take the time to look at these things and see the long-term effects. So when we have a trial and we want to see what happens long-term with this, don't muddy the waters. Those people went in and they did the trial. Let the half that did not take that vaccine, they don't get the vaccine. Let's see what happens long-term. So we have something to compare how this affects people. Because when I'm reading the Moderna outline describing what their technology does, and they're comparing it to software and operating systems, they're hacking our genome. They're essentially saying they're hacking our DNA. I mean, I read it word for word.
That's why we decoded the human genome, so we could hack it. I mean, this is the modern miracles of medicine.
We don't
that
want
we
to fly
were
too close to the sun.
Well, no, we don't. But I got to believe in the best and brightest scientific minds who have worked diligently over the past year to bring this to bear. Yeah, it's scary. It's new. I don't disagree on that. But I fear a politicalization of the vaccine itself, and it's going to further hamper this country's ability to just get on with getting on. Because
I find it reprehensible and I find it disgusting for chastising people who make a choice to get a vaccine or not get a vaccine.
Not getting the vaccine is up to you. I think that
you kind of came in pretty hot on me right there, and you were like putting me on the spot and putting a spotlight in, like I'm in an investigation room.
I'm just trying to draw a line. You're reading Moderna scripture. I just want to know
they're the people that are making it. Don't you want to hear what they have to say?
Well, I mean, it's a lot of corporate happy talk. When you read the blurb from their homepage, or whatever it was. I'm just saying that I don't know what I'm saying.
Well, how about this? Bloomberg, January 15th, 2020 news article.
Yep, I remember.
Okay, go ahead. I'll let you go.
Well, yeah, I think the conversation where we want to go from here, right, is to get into the whether or not it's mandated. And I don't think it'll be mandated, but what is going to happen, like you were saying. And I think that's the Bloomberg article you're going to bring up, where it's this
It's kind of leading into some of those
collection of companies that are.
Oh, no, that's a Financial Times article.
Whatever it is, I think that's the sort of the next frontier of this conversation is going to be not a mandate so much as it is going to be things you can't do if you're not vaccinated.
So I'll just say right from the outset, I'm against mandatory, really just about anything when it comes to health. I think that's real dangerous lines. I respect people who want to do things that the state thinks is the best, but I also respect people who are doing their own, what they feel is best for themselves and not. So with that said,
I also don't think that the state has the right to mandate any medical thing on you. I just think it is a sort of a societal thing. I'm looking at it through that
right.
lens.
We can just make fun of them and call them names if they don't do it. So Bloomberg in January 15th, 2021, there's an article, this comes from the Norwegian Medicine Agency. Norway warns of vaccination risks for sick patients over 80. Basically what came out of this, and this comes into the Moderna vaccine because this is where it is, 23 people have died in the country over a short period of time after receiving their first dose. And of those deaths, 13 have had autopsies, that with the results of those suggesting that common side effects may have contributed to severe reactions in frail and elderly people. And then now this...
You're talking about like anaphylaxis?
And, well, just death.
Yeah.
They died right after it.
This
has happened in Bulgaria. This has happened in Brazil. This has happened in the United States. This has happened in the Netherlands. So there are, and yes, I get it.
I haven't
there
heard
are just
about the deaths in the United States. I'm sorry, I haven't.
Well, there has been a doctor in Florida. That's sort of the big one that people have talked about. There was a doctor in Florida who died as a result right after taking a COVID vaccine. So, and yeah, they're spotty.
I guess I'm just going to have to take your word on that because I haven't seen it reported myself. But, like with any vaccine,
that comes into a larger conversation
there's
where we get our info now.
Like even the percentage of people who get anaphylaxis, which is like a severe allergic reaction, over 70% of them get that within the first 15 minutes, which is why they're keeping people there for 30 minutes.
And there's been some healthcare workers that have also had reactions to these shots as well.
Yeah, people are people. I'm just saying that the reactions are usually pretty quick, so that's why they're monitoring people, and they are of a magnitude that is no different than what they give you for like a CT scan when you come in. And like, it's sort of at the acceptable level of reaction.
Yeah. So again, to keep this conversation going here, because we're at like,
I know we should wrap this up. What else you got to say?
So here we go. Another article here.
You spent 15 minutes reading Moderna script.
Well, it's right out of the horse's mouth. You wanted to know what their technology and what it was all about. They're telling us what it is. So another thing that's a concern about this is basically requiring people through proxy of getting the vaccine. Financial Times, January 14th, 2021. Health and tech groups aim to create digital COVID vaccination passports. So basically, you got companies like Microsoft, Salesforce, and Oracle, Mayo Clinic. They're part of this group calling itself the Vaccination Credential Initiative, or VCI. Now, this is sort of along the line with something that's called the Common Pass, which has backing from the World Economic Forum. And this is all under the umbrella of what's called the Common Project Foundation, which has received funding from the Rockefeller Foundation and is being implemented by major airline alliances. So basically what this is that it's a passport with a QR code showing that you've taken the vaccine, and now you can travel, you can go overseas, you can fly across the country. And it's sort of like, show your papers, please. Papers, show your papers. And it becomes real scary now when through proxy, if the government doesn't create these bills and legislation saying that you have to take it. Well, now guess what? Companies, it's a private business, can't come and shop there. You can't fly. So it creates
it's funny
issues
to me
for
that Republicans who are so states' right and so like, if I don't want to bake a cake for those homos, I don't have to. If they don't want to let somebody in that isn't vaccinated, they don't have to, Brett. That is the capitalist society we live in. And that's the only way that they're going to strong arm most people into taking this vaccine, which they need to.
So you want to put the boot to their throat and inject them yourself.
I'm sorry, but the deplorables are going to need it. I'm sorry.
It's not just people that have conservative thought, Jason. You know,
No,
you look
no,
at
no,
Robert
there's-
Kennedy.
yeah,
You look at
you're
Robert
right, you're
Kennedy
right.
Jr.
There's
who has an issue with vaccines. And here's the thing: it's not a
Buddy,
it's not
you're not
said
letting
and
me
done.
talk at all. I
Well,
start to speak, and then you monologue again.
but
You really have
but
to let me get my
I get it,
my
but when
word
you,
in
but when
edgewise.
when you call names and you say offensive things, it just
I
really
was
gets
about
under my
to
skin.
agree with you that I think the anti-vaxxers are almost worse, or had been prior to this, worse on the left. They're just kind of a crazy consortium of people, I guess. I mean, yes, your body is your own, and you should be able to do with it as you wish, but you do not have the right to go to Starbucks. You don't have the right to do certain things that we've just commonly come to think of as our rights. It bothers me that we can't all get in this together. I'm sorry. I did not mean to, I come in a little hot. I didn't mean to impugn your patriotism, but I do think it's patriotic for us to try to quash this thing. And I think that the vaccination, the herd immunity, is the best way to do it. And I think that this is the conversation that is going to dominate 2021, and it already breaks my heart.
We have the right to move about freely in this society. We can cross state lines, we can travel, we can go about. And now we're going to start restricting human movement. And that really is a problem for me.
You think they're going to restrict you across state lines?
Yes. Other states have proposed this, that if you can't come into our state if you're not vaccinated, this stuff is already starting to be proposed.
Yeah, but I mean, that's like, you can't,
but here, where do you draw the line now? How far do the consequences go?
I'm saying that there's no feasible way to set up checkpoints at every possible road that comes in or out of a state to do that. That's just not going to happen. That's like
What if you start requiring people to show identification if they're from that state to make purchases in certain states?
I don't know.
If you go shopping in Minnesota and they're like, okay, well, we need to see your ID or driver's license or whatever.
What if you're younger than 16? What if you're you don't have a driver's license?
You gotta have your paperwork, and your
Okay.
paperwork proves.
So do you really think it's going to get that?
If it's already started, I mean, you're going at it from the mindset where if people don't do this, you've already started to demonize them from the
Well,
outset. And now you're saying, well, we got to do it. It's patriotic. And
I think
you did say to force people to take the vaccine. You have to find ways to force people to take the vaccine, almost word for word of what you said just a few moments ago.
Yeah, they need to take the vaccine.
Force them, you said, though, Jason. And
Okay.
you said consequences.
Did I say consequences?
Yes.
I just think that the consequences are that private establishments will get to tell you whether or not you can use them. That's
What about air travel? What about
that's
train travel?
the totally private companies, right? Are we a socialist country with socialist airplanes?
I like it when capitalism suits the people on the left.
Well, this is so funny because we're taking the opposite sides, but this is why we're both hypocrites, I guess, because we'll defend whatever ground we think is righteous at the moment. But the double-edged sword of capitalism is that the state is not always the arbiter of things. And I think more and more as we move into the 21st century, I have seen corporate America becoming more of a social conscious mechanism. I'm sure you
working more in hand in hand with the government.
You don't
you're saying?
like that. No. Taking the place of government. I feel like they're superseding government in the messaging of the things that government should message, and they're doing it here as well, where they're just kind of saying, listen, for everything to get back up and running, and for all of us to be as back to our real lives, there's going to have to be herd immunity. And one of the ways to get to that is to decline privileges to people who aren't getting vaccinated. And there will be a certain number of people who refuse, and there'll be a certain number of people who acquiesce. And that's just the pressure that corporate America can put on people because they have the right as a business. And it's sometimes it's works in my favor, sometimes it doesn't. I think this time it is a communal good. You don't necessarily think that. I mean, that's
what do you mean?
fine.
That I don't think it's a communal good? I don't
Well,
think
you don't.
that?
You don't, right?
I don't think we need to
having people decline.
No, that is not what I believe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. We're on opposite sides of this.
I don't believe. No, I'm saying you're wrong. And when I said I don't believe, I said I don't believe. You're wrong. What I believe is that people should have the choice. It
But
shouldn't be
y-
mandated. They shouldn't be chastised. They shouldn't be censored.
Yeah, so
They
you're
should-
saying
they
you
shouldn't
don't
have to-
believe that companies could say if you can come
Hold
in or
on.
not, right?
And people should not be chastised, demeaned, censored, made fun of, deplatformed, finances taken away, travel restricted, purchases restricted, basically put into a prison without actually going to prison for not taking a vaccine. That's what I'm not for. That's it. People want to take them, fine. If people don't want to take them, fine. Let's just remember in the span of how many hundreds of thousands of years or 100,000 years, depending on what sort of history and anthropology studies you want to go,
Speaking of 100,000 years, this is going long.
we're fine. In the span of things, herd immunity and vaccinations are a drop of water in the ocean in terms of how long humans have survived a lot of different calamities. And I don't believe that the greater good, the phrase is sacrifice the one for the many, so to speak, or, for the greater good kind of concept here. I believe every life is valued and is precious. But the government does not have a right. Corporations don't have the right. We are allowed to move around and purchase and barter and sell and move about freely as American citizens. And I believe humans in general. So when we start having these mandates and regulations through proxy, through corporations who are doing the bidding of status entities, that's a problem for me. I don't care about the vaccines, if people want to do them or not, or whatever. That's fine. It's the mandatory regulations through proxy and by the state with the boot on your throat, individuals like yourself saying we need to create consequences. We need to force people to do this.
No, it's not create consequences. It's take away privileges. It's take away privileges because Americans are so privileged. They think they have so many rights, and they.
Well, who are you to tell?
Do you think I want this any more than you? I'm just saying that I think that it's necessary.
It gives you a chance to berate people that don't
No,
have the
I'm
same
not-
political thought than
Oh
you.
my God.
And it gives people on the left chastise and call people who don't want to do this kind of stuff.
I'm not.
I'm just saying, it's happening in the news of people, the anti-vaxxers, they get censored. I mean, there's documentaries that can't even be aired.
I'm just pro-science, man. All right. And I just want to be done with this. And I think that there are large systemic things that need to be done on any number of levels. This is a war in a lot of ways that we're waging on a number of fronts. And I'm for getting to the end of this war.
Yeah.
And I think the quickest way is to get vaccinated. And
I respect your opinion
that's
on
going to
that.
be the next. That's going to be the battle.
I
that we go
respect
into
your
next.
opinion on that just as much as I hope you respect my opinion
Yeah,
on that.
I'm not trying to call you unpatriotic. I am sorry about that. I know that you're patriotic, but like you sit there and you talk about the statist interests and all of this stuff, and it's
But
like
there is.
I know, but you live in a state that you're super proud of. So this dichotomy of you constantly being just like thinking everything about the government is bad, and then thinking the place that you live and the government that was created in the place you live is the best thing ever. I mean, I can't square that circle sometimes.
I guess I just don't take marching orders very well.
Okay. Well, let's wrap it up. I think we've been pretty good about not being
Yeah,
each other's
we
throats.
wanted to try to keep this down to a certain time. But again, everybody look for the information for yourselves. We're not medical experts, but we hope you've enjoyed this conversation. As always, Jason, spirited conversation. Thank you. You can find us on all the social media platforms, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at the D2D podcast. Once again, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at the D2D podcast. 2 is numerical.
Yep, and you can listen to us on your favorite podcast provider. And please like and share and review and subscribe and help us get the word out. because-
Spirited conversation
I
once
know.
again, my friend.
Oh my goodness, not as bad as last week though.
All right. Well, have a great week coming up, and I'll see you soon.
Adios, Brett.
Goodbye, Jason.